G'day mates! Today's video we got to talk about the huge bombshell Epic just dropped banning multiple pros for 2 weeks, making them ineligible to play this FNCS and the next one because they were cheating. But a lot of people in the community think they're innocent and are very confused by this decision from Epic. I also want to talk about the Cash Cups today. We had Muzz winning his first solo Cash Cup since moving to NA East, and it was actually on NA West. There's a lot to talk about. Let's just jump into it. Alright, so why has Epic just banned people for 2 weeks, making them ineligible to play the current FNCS coming up in a couple weeks and next season's FNCS? I know you're probably thinking, Aussie, they must be cheating, they must be hacking, they must be stream sniping or teaming or doing something crazy to get banned for 2 weeks and 2 FNCSs. Well, it turns out they were abusing the guzzle heal off strategy I talked about in yesterday's video. And in case you missed it, I'll summarize it really quickly. There was a strategy in the game where if you went into Storm and you used the campfire and healed yourself up to 100 and then you popped a guzzle juice, you then wouldn't lose the effect of the guzzle juice despite being in Storm. And that is clearly how the item is not meant to function. People thought it was a funny strategy. Some people even used it in the EU Cash Cup round 1 to then qualify for the round 2 with 0 eliminations. A lot of people started debating whether this is fair or not, whether they should have their qualification spot. The player ended up being taken out of the finals, which kind of made sense. You want the best players in the finals possible, and the guzzle juice was vaulted in competitive, so the player wouldn't have even been able to use that strategy in the finals anyway, so it made sense to pull them out. But these people have now been banned for 2 weeks, some of them saying they didn't even do it in the Cash Cup, they only did an arena because they thought it was a bit of fun and they wanted to see how it works. So in today's video, I want to now start off talking about this from Epic's point of view. Why would they be so harsh banning these people for 2 weeks? Also, the community's perspective, and a lot of people saying they should not have been banned and this is a joke, and then what it means for Epic, because this is very scary and very concerning for Epic going forward. Now if you're now ramp boosting through walls, or maybe you're kind of using like a Spider-Man where you find a phase-in trick where you can Spider-Man around a wall, is that now exploiting? Like, where is this line? So let's start off talking about it from Epic's perspective. Why would they be so harsh with these players? Now, I have to make this clear. I haven't talked to anyone at Epic. Obviously, they haven't made a statement, so I'm just assuming why they've gone out and made this decision and trying to maybe explain it from their point of view for some of you guys who are confused. I'm guessing they're seeing this as a form of cheating because in the actual description of the guzzle juice item, it does mention that if you take any form of damage outside of fall damage, the item should stop working. So clearly, the guzzle juice is not functioning the way it's supposed to, and they want to stop people from exploiting and breaking these items in the future because this did have a really big impact on the Cash Cups today. Again, I talked about in yesterday's video, with the guzzle juice being vaulted from competitive, it meant that if you broke a cooler, you were guaranteed to get 4 splashes. Today we had the solo finals, so any player or team that was dropping anywhere with the coolers was walking out with sometimes like 18 chug splashes just to themselves, and that's clearly not how the game is supposed to function. So it does have an impact on the future of the game. It also had an impact in the Cash Cups. Players who would have qualified or would have done better ended up losing to the healing strategy, and maybe that's why they don't qualify. And then if it was still in the game in the finals, maybe that's why they don't make money. It's the same reason why so many people didn't like the Cray heal off strategy towards the end of last season. But a lot of people arguing, how is this any different to a lot of exploits we've seen in the past? We've had so many exploits that I can name. We've got a lot of them coming out from Tfue. We had the Ghost Peek or the Tfue Wiggle where you'd peek up and down off the ramp and you could hit shots and you couldn't get hit back. Tfue figured out if you pop an emote at the right time, you can reset your pickaxe swing. I would argue some other things that used to not be known that are now just common exploits would be ramp boosting in through walls. Learning that if you jump at the right time and you hit a ramp at the right time, you can break through a wall and go into the box. We used to have the EJ dash. If you guys remember, if you jumped at the right time inside your ramp, it would phase you and push you out of the ramp, so you got a bit of a speed boost. That has now since been patched. We even have exploits being discovered this very season, or what I would deem to be an exploit, I guess. We have Martos figuring out that if you put a reinforced wall on a wall at the right time with a door and in the right position, you phase through the wall. And I want to make this very clear. I do not think Martos should be banned for what he has done there. That is an incredibly smart play. I don't know if he invented it or he's just popularizing it, but he's using it a lot in his videos, and it's really cool. That's what one thing that Martos is very well known for. It's very smart mechanics, and most people see that as a mechanic. It's not an exploit. Despite the fact that an armored wall is not supposed to function that way, it's a pretty cool little trick that you can do with it. But now, according to Epic Games, Is that going to be an exploit? And I'll talk about that in a little bit. A lot of people also very confused why Epic has now drawn the line here with this item. We've seen so many times in the past people using exploits like where you walk around with skins on that are completely silent. People have used those in cash cups very clearly. That is not how the skin is supposed to function. We've had pickaxes that do double damage and headshot damage. Players using these pickaxes in tournaments and getting no punishment. We've even had mechanics that are completely broken where if you get off the zip line in the right way, you're kind of like a complete wrecking ball of destruction. You can just walk through builds and break them. Nothing happened there. So what is it about this item that made Epic draw that very harsh line, and is a 2-week ban and 2 FNCSs a little bit too harsh? Maybe they could have come out with a warning and were like, look guys, this guzzle juice item was clearly not how it's supposed to function. We're going to give you a warning, or maybe a 1-day ban or a 1-week ban. You can play the next FNCS, but if you guys do something like this again, you will be banned for 2 weeks and miss out on FNCSs. But with no word from Epic, we're just left as a community to try to figure out where the line is. What is an exploit and what isn't? I'll give you some examples. Maybe not something like ramp boosting or, using the reinforced walls, because maybe that's just a kind of phasing mechanic. Let's talk about, let's say maybe next week, and this isn't the case, let's say there's some crazy strategy where if you use a harpoon mid-air while Spider-Manning, you get double the fish out of the fishing hole. Is that now an exploit? Technically, you're using an item outside of its intended feature. You know you're only supposed to get 1 fish when you use a harpoon from a fishing hole. So if now you get 2 fish, are you now exploiting? If you can now start stacking these fish and pull off some old school Cray heal-off strategy, have you now exploited, and could you risk getting banned for 2 weeks? And this is why I bring this up. I'm not bringing it up to try to give Epic a hard time. I just want to kind of present to you guys the situation where it is and warn you that if there's something in the future that looks a little bit suspicious with an item, it looks like it's not supposed to function that way, maybe don't abuse it. But then again, if there's other people abusing it in the tournaments and just, doing really, really well, that's probably going to frustrate you and you're going to want to try and do it as well. So I just really want to see Epic make some kind of a statement, draw a line in the sand, and let us know exactly what is a bug, what is an exploit, what is going to be punished, and what isn't. Because right now, we're left in the dark, and I feel bad for these players who, were the ones that had to have an example made of them. Ultimately, I wouldn't have liked if this guzzle juice bug stayed in the game. If people were doing this in the finals, in games, and they were just getting win after win, not actually fighting anyone, it would have been frustrating. I'm happy Epic fixed the bug in the item, but a lot of people in the community saying it is their job to fix these items. They should not be punishing the players who discovered the bug. It is their job as game developers to make sure these bugs don't exist. So I've presented both sides of the story. I want to hear in the comments, what are your guys' thoughts? Do you think Epic went too far here, or do you think these players deserve to be banned? Maybe not for as long, or do you think this punishment is fully warranted? Now, let's jump into talking about the Cash Cup results today, and I do want to put a bit of an asterisk on this one. I don't want to take away the performances from anyone who did well today, but with the Spider-Man being nerfed in a few days from 80 uses down to 20, and with the Chug Splashes right now being so broken at drops that had the coolers, the finals did feel a bit interesting. It felt very, very luck-based on where you dropped. If you dropped somewhere that had coolers or had a Spider-Man, you were just at a massive advantage to other players who didn't. Again, some players are finding ways to place without the Chug Splash or without the Spider-Man or without one or the other. Some players playing very, very well with the Spider-Man and Chug Splashes, some playing terribly. So just keep that in mind when we talk about the Cash Cup today. So a lot of you guys are taking these Cash Cups as who's going to do well in FNCS and who's doing the best in the super stacked Saint lobbies. And I just think today was a little bit different. I think next week's results will be quite different to what today's were. Kicking off with EU, and I would have loved to have seen Malibuka in that first place position after such a dominant round one, setting a Cash Cup point record yesterday in solos, but down in 6th place, still phenomenal performance. And I want to point out that Malibuka did this off the back of having very, very low average elims for a top 6 position, but very high average placement, showing that Malibuka clearly can adjust his playstyle for opens compared to finals. And again, just shows that he's all around very, very solid player when it comes to solos in both game modes. We had Rezumi come out in first on 121, beating out Screwy by 16 points. Neither of them getting any wins, but really, really consistent placement. We then had Kiduo in the top 3 as well, and I'm mostly going to focus on that podium finish. There were some big players that were struggling down towards the bottom, but again, I'm not going to use this to talk about players who are doing poorly. There was a lot of players and teams that I think are just waiting for next week once the Spider-Man get nerfed, because it really does feel like you have the Spider-Man, you can do well, and if you don't have it, you're just going to struggle. I did want to give a specific big shout out to Connor, or CNR1X. He placed 17th in the EU Cash Cup, getting $450 on console. And I'm doing my best to hype up the console guys, especially when they're placing in the set lobbies and placing top 20. The other thing that I find very interesting about Connor as well is, firstly, he shouted out the Destiny Jesus Masterclass, which I think was great, kind of crediting where he's gained a lot of his game knowledge from and how he's playing so well on, inferior hardware. But also the fact that when I commented it and Destiny Jesus did get a PC, he said no chance, console forever. So I guess he's loyal to the console. I mean, he's enjoying it, but again, just a little bit more motivation for you guys who maybe are on console, that you can place, you can make money. It's not all about the PC pros. On NA East, we had Ocus, or Ocus Pocus as he is in game right now, getting 113 points, taking out the first place with 1 victory royale and a second place as well. Ocus played very, very well in the Cash Cup today. This was an example of a player who wasn't getting guaranteed Spider-Man out of Tilted, and I don't really think was getting that many guaranteed splashes either. There's only one cooler in Tilted, so one player doing very, very well despite all the criticism from other pros today. But Ocus, being Ocus, was very aggressive in the early and mid game and was often hunting down players with the Spider-Man and the splashes, taking them and utilizing them. But that's a fantastic strategy, and I found it interesting. I thought this was going to be Ocus's first tournament since switching to claw grip. He's been very vocal on social media how he's trying to get better at using claw grip, where, if you guys don't know, it's on controller, where instead of holding the controller in a default pattern, you turn your fingers over so you have access to more buttons. You controller players know, but Ocus has gone back to regular, just holding the controller as default, which just blows my mind. But he came out in first place, just beating out Acorn, who was doing phenomenal. In the last game, unfortunately, Acorn got a 0 elim 42nd compared to Ocus's 4 elim 11th, and that's what kind of dropped him behind. We saw Dubs, on the other hand, come out and get a 9 elim win, just going absolutely insane in his last game to get a podium finish. NA West, we had a very familiar name and face. We had Muzz at the top of the leaderboard, his first Cash Cup win since going to NA East in solos, and it's on NA West, getting 148 points, beating out second, which is Batman Booger, another phenomenal young up-and-comer, by 38 points. So Muzz played absolutely phenomenally. Again, another player who wasn't actually getting the Spider-Man on drop, was having to rotate for it from the Sanctuary area, was getting quite a few splashes, but again, it's a different playstyle right now. A lot of players using these different things as an excuse. Oh, I don't have Spider-Man, don't have splashes, but quite a few pros still coming out on top without it. So we'll see how these players go next week. If you were doing really well right now without using the items that are about to get nerfed, you're going to be doing even better next week when a bunch of players start to kind of drop off without being able to abuse these items as much. And I did want to focus on Batman Booger a little bit as well. This is a player that I have a soft spot for. He just joined JFT, which is an OC org who's now branched out, who signed to him and his duo mate Wheels. Watching their VOD was awesome. Both these players streaming, by the way, so first and second streaming the Cash Cups. Batman Booger was being coached by his duo partner Wheels, and if you're looking to try and improve at the game right now, I would highly recommend going back and watching Batman Booger's VOD. It was really, really good to see how he was playing it. And then we had Yawn, a player I don't know too much about, in third place overall. So there were some really good Cash Cups across the region. Once we get the meta kind of shifting up a little bit more, I might start to focus on who's playing way more consistently. But with the Spider-Man about to get a massive, massive nerf, I think some of the players who've been relying on it too heavily are going to start to drop off in next week, but we'll have to see what the leaderboard shows. All right, guys, that does it for another video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please chuck a like on it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you in the next one.